While China was caught up in internal power struggles, tensions with Japan were on the rise. Japan? Let's rewind a bit. In 1928, in an incident staged by the Japanese army, a bomb blew up a section of the Manchurian railway, killing the Manchurian warlord. His son took over and pledged allegiance to Chiang. In 1931, in another incident staged by the Japanese army, another bomb blew up another section of the Manchurian railway, giving Japan an excuse to launch an invasion. Chiang's nationalist government did little to resist because they were too busy fighting some naughty communists. And so, Japan seized control of Manchuria. By 1936, it seemed increasingly likely that another section of railway was gonna blow up somewhere in China, and the public became ever more upset with the government's inaction. The CCP seized the moment to call for a national united front against Japanese aggression. If Chiang accepted the call, it would force the Kuomintang to pause their attacks on the CCP. If he refused, he'd find himself at odds with public opinion. What do you plan to do? I'll deal with the internal problems first, before dealing with the external one. Your internal problems? One of Chiang's internal problems was the CCP. Another was the Northeastern Army. The Northeastern Army? The northeast of China, known as Manchuria back then, was home to the Northeastern Army. When the young warlord of Manchuria pledged allegiance to Chiang, this army, however, remained loyal to him rather than to Chiang. Chiang certainly didn't like that. After Japan seized Manchuria, a strong desire emerged within the Northeastern Army to fight back and reclaim their homeland. Chiang wanted to weaken the Northeastern Army and the CCP, and he just had this brilliant idea to kill the two birds with one stone. I'll send the Northeastern Army to fight against the CCP. Wait a second, you mean you want to send an army that wants nothing more than fighting Japan to go fight your political rival who is calling to unite all possible forces to fight Japan? Is there a problem? No, sir. And so, the Northeastern Army was sent off to fight the CCP, but the two soon decided that they liked each other more than they liked Chiang. In December 1936, the young warlord and another Kuomintang commander kidnapped Chiang and persuaded him to negotiate with the CCP. This event eventually led to the formation of the Second United Front. Then, Japan launched yet another invasion against China. The Second Sino-Japanese War was long and brutal and could not possibly be covered just in this video. But in terms of the Chinese Civil War, it had a significant impact. The two parties agreed to put their fight on pause, and the Chinese Red Army was reorganized into the Kuomintang Army. This led to some unintended side effects. Many Kuomintang commanders grew sympathetic to the CCP. Some even secretly joined them. During the war, the CCP managed to establish numerous power bases within Japanese-occupied areas. As a result, their forces grew dramatically. Just days before Japan's surrender, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan and invaded Manchuria, putting Stalin in a good position to take over. And so he did. This made the other allies, in particular the United States, a bit uneasy. So US President Truman told Chiang, "Hey man, watch out for Stalin. He might be up to something in Manchuria." Chiang also recognized the threat, particularly with the now much stronger Chinese communists. So he went to Stalin. "Hey Stalin, can you please hand over Manchuria to me?" What would it take for you to hand over Manchuria to me? As it turned out, a bunch of stuff. In return, Stalin declared an alliance with Chiang, and he promised that he would give back Manchuria to Chiang within a few months. This new alliance stunned the Chinese communists. In response, Mao told his comrades that it was more important than ever to be self-reliant. By the way, there is absolutely no way you'll betray me, right? Okay, good talk. See ya! Then, Japan surrendered. Almost immediately after, clashes broke out between the two parties. The rising tension between them made the other allies, in particular the United States, a bit uneasy. Any chance you guys could sit down and talk the whole thing out? Sure, why not? Great hopes for peace were placed on the Chongqing Negotiations. But even during the talks, skirmishes continued, and the negotiations went as well as you would expect. The two parties worked out an agreement on paper, but it soon fell apart, and the country teetered on the edge of full-scale civil war. This made the other allies, in particular the United States, a bit uneasy. Alright, let's try this again. General Marshall, would you go to China and, fix this? So Marshall went to China. To everyone's surprise, he managed to broker a ceasefire between the two parties and got them to agree to hold a conference to settle their differences. So, problem solved? But no, because everything went wrong in Manchuria. Following Japan's surrender, both the CCP and the Kuomintang raced to take control of Manchuria. The CCP was faster, but the Soviets occupied the major cities and politely asked them to go away. So the CCP did what they did best, heading to the vast countryside and setting up bases there. A few months later, the Soviets finally began to pull out. They likely coordinated with the Chinese communists who were right behind them to take over. According to the United States, the Soviets also left a generous parting gift to their comrades, the arms of 700,000 surrendering Japanese troops. That sneaky, treacherous Stalin. If not for him, I would have beaten the communists without breaking a sweat. Sir, the same report says you get a larger cache of 1.2 million Japanese arms. That's very impressive, sir. Meanwhile, with help from the United States, Chiang transferred some of his best troops to Manchuria. With more Kuomintang forces arriving, Chiang decided to launch an attack on the communist-occupied Manchurian cities. The communists fought hard, but they were no match for Chiang's elite troops, and they had to retreat to the far north. Buoyed by his recent success, Chiang was determined to eliminate the CCP once and for all. But there was one person who didn't like this idea: Marshall. Hang on, what if you can't beat them? Of course I can, and I'll do it fast, in 8 to 10 months. Listen, man, your economy is broken, your people are starving, your inflation is skyrocketing. You can't win the war without a good economy. China is full of peasants. Why would peasants care about inflation? They don't even have money. Then, Chiang launched massive assaults on all communist bases, formally starting the Civil War. On the communist side, Mao gave his own prediction. Comrades, fear not. The counter-revolutionaries are nothing but paper tigers. Give me 5 years, and we will achieve victory. So which of them was right? Answer: none of them. He was wrong because the Kuomintang lost, and he was wrong because it actually took him just 3 years. Back then, however, Mao was seen as overly optimistic. Despite their considerable growth, the communists were still far outnumbered and poorly equipped compared to the Kuomintang. Mao had a strategy to deal with this. It's called keep men, lose land. Mao knew that his troops would probably suffer heavy losses if they directly confronted the Kuomintang army. So instead, he ordered them to back off when Kuomintang attacked to preserve their strength. Thus, keep men. This approach came at a cost. The CCP's territory shrank significantly in the first few months of the war. What about the lost land? Don't worry, land can always be retaken again. It took a while, but eventually Chiang realized that his attacks won't inflict him serious damage, so he decided to focus his efforts instead. And he had a great target in mind: Yan'an. He gathered 300,000 troops and surrounded the city. Unlike Chiang, Mao saw Yan'an as having only symbolic value, and left only a small force to defend it. The defenders held out just long enough for the residents to evacuate. Then it withdrew, allowing the Kuomintang to take over. Hooray! I've taken their capital! I've won! But the communists didn't seem to think so. At that time, the CCP troops in Yan'an were led by a hot-tempered but not hot-headed man. His name was Peng Dehuai. 3 years later, he would face General Douglas MacArthur in Korea. The Chinese, there's no way that they'll ever get involved. Tell the boys that they'll be home for Christmas dinner. Hey buddy, don't you want to stay with us? Peng led his troops into the mountainous ranges to play a game of hide-and-seek with Chiang's army, surprising everyone by actually winning a series of battles. On other fronts, the communists were faring well too. 8 months into the war, they stopped retreating and began holding their ground, even managing to push back in some areas. One standout victory came at Menglianggu, where the CCP annihilated the Kuomintang 74th Division. This news was a huge shock to Kuomintang commanders, as the 74th Division was considered the best of the best, composed of veteran soldiers and equipped with US-supplied weapons, all of which now fell into communist hands. Even worse, many captured soldiers didn't just surrender, they switched sides and joined the communist army. And they weren't alone. In fact, throughout the war, so many nationalist soldiers defected to the communists that they even earned their own nickname, Liberated Soldiers. Turning to the northeast, after their initial success, the Kuomintang was unable to push further, and the war came to a stalemate. At that time, the communist forces in the region were under the command of Lin Biao, a former student at the Huangpu Military Academy, where Chiang was headmaster. He had been a shy and reserved student, kind of the guy nobody talks to at the lunch table, so Chiang didn't think too much of him. But now, the once quiet cadet was leading the communist army to battle against his master's most trusted commanders. Lin focused on expanding his base and strengthening his army. and by the summer of 1947, he sensed that the time had come. He then launched a series of offensives to retake lost ground. This campaign became known as the Summer Campaign. Then came the Autumn Campaign and the Winter Campaign, during which he cut the railway lines between the cities and isolated the Kuomintang forces inside. In the Central Plains, eager not to be outdone by their comrades, the CCP leaders launched their own counterattacks. It's difficult to single out one main leader here, as several were involved. But perhaps the most famous among them was this guy, who would later become known for his economic reforms and his fondness for cats. China needs development, one way or another. Black cat or white cat, it doesn't matter, as long as it catches mice. In 1947, the Liu Deng army marched deep into Kuomintang heartland, securing a foothold with a string of victories. Building on this momentum, they expanded communist-controlled areas in the region, inching closer to the Kuomintang's then capital, Nanjing. Then came 1948, a year marked by a significant global event, the Berlin airlift. For a while, both the United States and the Soviet Union had attention drawn to the city of Berlin. Watching his army's success and shifting global dynamics, Mao concluded it was time for the final battles. What if imperialists intervene? We need to act fast. And remember, only victory can stop imperialism. And fast and victorious they were. The Northeast was the only area where the CCP held a numerical advantage, so Mao decided to begin there. In September, the Liaoshen campaign kicked off. City by city, they dismantled the Kuomintang's defenses, eventually seizing full control of Manchuria. Next came the Pingjin campaign, targeting 3 cities, Zhangjiakou, Tianjin, and Beijing. The first 2 fell quickly, leaving Beijing isolated. General Fu Zuoyi, what's your plan to defend this ancient, beautiful city? I surrender. Meanwhile, the Huaihai campaign began when the CCP struck directly at the Kuomintang's headquarters in Xuzhou. Chiang sent his elite troops as reinforcements, but they were intercepted. Then, both Kuomintang armies were annihilated by the communist forces. In just 4 months, the Kuomintang lost all 3 campaigns and 1.5 million soldiers, and with them, their dominance over China came to an end. Faced with defeat, Chiang and his nationalist government had to flee to Taiwan. Then, that moment came, on the day when 5 stars rose over China. This time, they remembered, it was October 1st, 1949.